Like folks, Paul here. It's been a wee while since I did a workshop, but I've decided to do. I just got it in my head. I've been doing all these Captain Simon Fraser tunes every day, and I was looking at the box that contains Nathaniel Gow's Fiddle while I was doing it, and I thought, you can fit. I'm going to go and maybe do a workshop on Nathaniel Gow tunes. So that's what I'm going to do. There's 3 tunes I'm going to work on. All by Nathaniel, and maybe the most interesting part of this is not my playing, but actually the fiddle that I'm playing on. This is Nathaniel's own fiddle, and I've done workshops with this before last year in lockdown, and it's a beautiful instrument. It was made in 1777. Let's just check. Oh, can I see it? Aye, 1777. Made in Aberdeen by one of the finest Scottish makers, Joseph Ruddiman, and every reason to think that this was bought by Niel Gow for Nathaniel, bought by Niel when he was delivering his fiddle to get repaired because he fell on the ice at the dam coming home for an event and slipped, landed on the fiddle. No hard cases at that time. They tended to be what they called green baize bags. So he landed in his fiddle and took it up to Aberdeen to get fixed, repaired. While he was there, I think this is the fiddle he bought. So this is his own fiddle, and a lovely instrument it is. So it's a great thing to be able to play. So I'm going to play 3 tunes: a jig, a reel, and a slow air. It doesn't say it's a slow air, but it feels like it should be played. So I'm going to start played as a slow air. So I'm going to start with a tune called Lady Charlotte Bruce's Favourite. It's one of these tunes that I find that I kind of recognise, but I couldn't tell you the name of. I mean, I ken a lot of music, like most players, you have quite a big repertoire of music that's in your head, but there's tunes that you recognise without ever having sat down and worked on. So these are in fact tunes a bit like that. So I'm going to start with Lady Charlotte Bruce's Favourite, which is a jig. And it's got that kind of golden age of Scottish fiddle music style about it. It sounds like a Nathaniel Gow, William Marshall type of tune. Very definitely a Scottish jig rather than an Irish jig, but at the same time, it's quite an elegant tune. A lot of the tunes for that period are quite like that. So I'll play it through for you. See what you think. One of you that was looking in earlier maybe saw the music that I posted up, because I've posted up the music for these 3 tunes with the bowings marked in, and so that's how I'll be going through them. So this isn't a concert, this is really a workshop. So if you're just tuning in to listen to fiddle music, well, it might be a wee bit in the heavy and dry side, but if you are looking to maybe learn a few tips here and there, that's fine. So anyway, I'll play it through for you for a start. It's in 1 flat, which puts some folk off. Some folk are not very comfortable in flat keys, but it could have been worse. It could have been 3 or 4 flats. So 1's not too bad. So if you're playing this, make sure your first finger is pulled right back on the A and E string. First thing about this is feels totally different to my own fiddle. a lot of ways your fiddle's like your singing voice. So when you swap to a different instrument, you find everything's totally different. The sound is the first thing, and then the feel, because you find every fiddle has different strengths and different weaknesses. It takes a while to get to ken all these different aspects. And then, I mean, I would say if you're buying a fiddle, you want to have that fiddle in your hands for a couple of weeks until you start to really find its voice. This one's got a nice tone, nice bright tone. It's a bit weaker on the bottom strings though. My own fiddle has a very deep, rich tone, and this one's not quite as strong. So I find myself trying to push the tone a little bit harder than I maybe would, because I'm trying to compensate for the lack of something in my ear. I'm expecting something bigger to come booming out, but it's not quite that sort of fiddle. So, right, a nice lively tune. It's a kind of tune I feel that you can very easily visualise the dancers. It's that, and if I speak about dancers, I'm not speaking about the Riverside Club in Glasgow with folk going round hell for leather. I'm thinking more of the Royal Scottish Country Dance Society, and nobody's as kind of committed to learning Scottish country dancing that they want to go to something like that. But that's really the feel for me that you get. It's very elegant. The pace is a little bit steadier than you would get at a ceilidh. And I suppose it means that everybody can look lovely when they're going round. You take a bit more time. I think there's definitely space to play with more lift as well. So quicker's nae aye better. I mean, it can be kind of impressive for a while, but I find I just begin to lose interest. It's just relentless speed. This kind of music needs a heartbeat and a pulse, and you certainly want to play with a bit of lift to it, because it's dance music, and part of that as a musician is trying to encourage folk to dance. Now, nobody plays for dancing, but it's definitely worthwhile when you're approaching this type of music that you bear that in mind. How does your playing and how your interpretation of the music, how does that affect the dancers? So anyway, well, let's go back a bit. We're going to take it slower this time, and we'll take it nice and steady, play it through slow, and then bring out a few wee points that I want to flag up. The downfall of this live internet stuff is I can't see if anybody's trying to play along with me, so I'll try and use my sense for the little bit there ever was in the first place, but I'll try and gauge it so that we're hopefully giving folk time. Obviously folk could be lots of different levels. So, Lady Charlotte Bruce's Favourite by Nathaniel Gow on his own fiddle. Right, nice and steady. Now, there's quite a lot of slurs in this particular tune. It's nae aye the case. Lots of jigs you would find nae a lot of space for slurs. You could if you want, but a lot of them, for their triplets and that, you would tend to play them with open bowing. But in this particular tune, there's quite a lot where you can slur, and I've marked that in the music. Try and use as much bow as you can, especially if you're playing slowly, because you've got time and space. And that slurring of the bow helps give the music a little bit of fluidity as well. Okay, so watch that first note. Let's check the tuning first. Okay, I'll be ready. you were playing along, I hope you were sticking in there. It's a bit difficult to answer any questions as you're going through and playing. I'm sitting here myself, and I got my assistant, my beautiful assistant, to help me out with any notifications. But I might manage to spot it coming up. If somebody says, could you play a bit slower, I can go back out of that. So as I said earlier, I mean, playing it slow, there's lots of scope to use a bit more bow, and it's probably something that a lot of folk could maybe do a bit more, especially, I mean, if you're playing in PA systems and microphones a lot, you can, it's awfully easy to get a kind of tied up where you can turn the volume up. You don't have to create the sound. But a good example of that for me is when I used to play with a band called Rock, Salt and Nails, which were a folk rock band from Shetland, and I mean, I wasn't the only fiddle that ever played with them, but I did play with them to some degree for about 4 years, maybe it might have even been 5, but certainly 4 years. And the longest tour we ever did was 3 weeks, I think it was, and I have to say, did a lot of playing, a lot of quick playing, but playing through a PA system, through an electric fiddle for 3 weeks, I found I had to work on my traditional stuff, which is my bread and butter at Dye has been. To do my solo gigs as a traditional fiddler, it took me about 2 weeks playing for a couple of hours a day to get my playing back to a standard that I was happy with. The fact is, if you're playing through electrical instruments, and they're great tools, but I find that a lot of the finer points and the subtleties that you really spend years developing, they're inclined to go out the door a wee bit. If you're playing totally solo, I would say it maybe wouldn't be quite the same. But when you're playing in a band with drums and bass and electric guitar and keyboards, you're kind of you're just part of the overall sound, which is what you want to be. So so things like using your bow, it's easy to just let it slip a wee bit, but it's good to be working on creating the tone on your own with no assistance, and the bow is the only way to do that. There is a fair element of the amount of pressure you put into the strings creates a more solid sound, but really the bow is the key thing. So if I go to the beginning of the tune, now there you go, that's first bar, and I've used 3 whole bows. The first lead-in note, I've used the heel bow, tipped to heel, and it's worth noting that is near the middle, that's near the heel of the bow. Might have folk say play at the heel, and that's as far as they go. So try and get that a little bit in there, because if you can get up there, you get that extra tone. And so we're playing it slowly. You can work on that in your own time. Just use the bow, you'll get the tone. First part right through. As I said, lots of bow. Few things to watch. There's triplets all the way through this tune. Crisp, articulate playing, making sure every note is clearly heard. So picking up the speed, you should still be able to hear these triplets coming through nice and clearly. So just watch for that. Make sure you're getting the fingers down firmly. You want to be hearing it there, but for far I am, I can feel the fingers. You can hear that kind of thump onto the fingerboard because they're coming down firmly. So nice bit of pressure on the strings. So if I play this with a little bit of bow and very little pressure, it begins to go out of pitch, and then you get harmonics and squeaks. Press down a bit firmer. Now it'll bend flat if you didn't press it down firmly enough. It's not enough just to touch the string, you have to press the string and create the tone. Can you hear that? Press down firmly. Listen to the tone change. See, I haven't moved my finger up nor down, that was purely pressure. Bit more bow, press harder. So, bow speed, using the bow at speed and pressing down. I mean, I added in vibrato into that. The vibrato just opens up the tone, you get that extra bit of power there. So you don't have to turn it up to 11, you should hit it in your hands there. So you can get a lot of tone by using the bow and pressing down firmly, and a wee bit of vibrato. It's just a tool to create tone and expression. So that's the first thing. Triplets. The eagle-eyed, you will notice in the last line, in the first bar and second bar of the last line, they've got the dotted notes putting into the music. I've pretty much just ignored that because every triplet that I play in a jig, it's almost invariably played the same way, so you dot the first note. I would be inclined to say, like on a dotted notes in Scottish music, I tend to very near double dot it, which should suggest to you that it's a lot longer than just a bit longer. It's really long. Therefore, the short notes are really, really short, and you get a distinctive accent. It's very, very, very clear. So rather than going it tends to be a bit more played like that in Cape Breton. Now, I'm not an expert in Cape Breton fiddling, I've heard plenty, but I can't tell you this is how they play it in Cape Breton. But I've had a lassie that learnt mainly in the Cape Breton style, and her jigs, the triplets are that kind of more open, equal feel. So it's a bit more like. Oh, sugar. Now, that's maybe not the best example, but the contrast to how I would play it is. So that rhythm comes through really clearly, and it shouldn't affect the tempo. It should be the same, but that da da tum ta da tum rather than da 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 da. If you're just tuning in, folks, I'm on about triplets. You might think I've gone stark raving mad, but it's that ta da tum, that middle note, really, really short. Because it's short doesn't mean it's not important. It's got to come through clearly, but it's crisp and short, really articulately played. And that's the thing, sometimes with pupils that you can find they're working on jigs, it's sometimes that middle note, it's nae there, it just doesn't come through as loud as the bigger notes at either side, and because it's faint, it's almost like the ear doesn't get a chance to pick it up, so make sure you're catching them cleanly. The other thing I did that I didn't really notice until I started teaching was that with the triplets, between the first and second note, there's almost like a very slight break that creates space, a wee bit of air. And that, I think, is one of the things that helps make the music dance a little bit. If I try that again, get that nice and clear. There you go. So I'm going to play it through slowly once. And I'm going to play it twice quick, so 3 times. I was never good at maths, but I think I can stretch the 3. So slow the first time, we'll pick it up a bit, and then we'll pick it up again. But still within, I would say, a kind of conservative speed. Nothing to do with the party, but I kind of didn't, not too extreme. We're not going to go off the rails with tempo. Nice and steady. Okay, so we'll start slow and we'll build it up, but we should be able to hopefully play it in a tempo that means a Scottish country dancer could dance around their living room, which by all means feel free to. Righto, Lady Charlotte Bruce's Favourite by Nathaniel Gow on his Zane fiddle. And I think that's just about not enough of that particular tune. It's a good tune, like I think it's a nice jolly tune, but it's no one that ever made it into my repertoire, I have to say. So it's nice for me to be playing through something that's nice and familiar, but a good tune, a really good tune. Nathaniel Gow wrote some great tunes. The problem with Nathaniel, he's a bit of a worry, you can. He has a reputation for plagiarism. William Marshall being his main target. He was like, I wrote this tune, look, it's a change of name. And that was one of the main reasons that the Duke of Gordon managed to convince Marshall to publish his music, because folk were picking his tunes and claiming they'd written them, which is never very good. That's most ungallant. So, but he wrote tunes like that. He wrote Miss Humbleton, I Paint Caitlin, which is a beautiful tune. Things like Master Francis Sitwell, Lady Mary Ramsay, the Fairy Dance. And if you haven't got that in your repertoire and you're Scottish, well, I would go and get the book out and find it, because it's a great standard. But it was a Nathaniel Gow tune, so he could write great tunes. So as much as anything, I think it's maybe interesting to hear this fiddle played. I mean, we're never going to get Nathaniel come back for the grave to play tunes for us, but well, that's his fiddle. I ken it's me playing, but I mean, you do hopefully get a chance to hear the voice that might have been heard by Nathaniel in audiences. The social whirl in Edinburgh, Nathaniel was one of the leading lights. Niel Gow would have played this fiddle, I'm damn sure it, and very possibly Robert Burns, who knows, because Nathaniel was certainly in Edinburgh when Robert Burns was starting about, so there you go. It's not something you hear at a Burns supper very often. Robert Burns, when he went to Edinburgh, he was just starting about. So there you go, that's the first tune. And as I would say with one of these, this is not me saying this is the only way to play this type of music. It's how I'm playing it, and you can take what you like for that. But I'm not saying you must do this or it's wrong, because there's lots of ways to skin a cat. There's lots of different ways that work. Now let's say I look at 281. The next tune is a reel. It's a wee bit of fickery kind. It's called Miss Dundas of Arniston. Now she'd a tune written for her by Niel Gow as well. And I think when I was playing through Neil and Nathaniel's tunes, I think I came across tunes for her about 3 times, different tunes. And so this is in I Dinna Ken, which is partly why I picked it. It's a nice tune. A little tricky. It's in a nice, approachable key for most fiddlers. D is good for pretty much anybody. Or it's as good as you're going to get. A and D are is handy for a fiddler that plays on a key. But I'll play it through slow and steady, and then we'll work through it. There's not so much really to worry about, just play it in tune. Keep it rhythmic and mark it dance. So anyway, Miss Dundas of Arniston. There you go. A lovely tune, I think you'll agree. But again, nae so well kent, nothing like. And again, this is a tune that never made it into my repertoire, but nae because I was running wrong with it. It just, I tend to find it was an awful lot of stuff that I learnt playing. I was picking up stuff for the Strathspey reel. I mean, they'd hundreds of sets and stuff I was picking up myself, and things I was being taught by, well, let's say Dougie Lawrence, for instance. And that kind of formed the sort of bedrock of your repertoire. But there's hundreds of tunes. I mean, last year I must have recorded about 2,000 tunes. And for it come to Skinner, I would say I could probably play 100 tunes. I would probably ken. But if you consider that you wrote between 600 and 700 tunes, that's a lot of tunes that I didn't ken. And of course you get into habits, and there's an awful lot of stuff I'd never even looked at. Now, it's not good by all honest stretch of imagination, but there's a lot of really great music that I'd never ever looked at, and I feel ashamed of myself, you can, but I play a lot of stuff. But anyway, there's good stuff to find. So Miss Dundas at Arniston, nice tune, using plenty of bow there. There's music here for it. You can see it's like there's dots and stuff. I didn't tend to play them when I'm playing slow, because if it happens when I play reels, there's accents come into the music anyway. So I didn't really feel that I need to kind of put it into there. Once it picks up speed, the accents will come. there's accents. If I try and sort of play it out to let you hear it. And that's too much, but for the sake of demonstration, you can sort of see if it's happening. The dots that are written into the music maybe help convey that, but I find that although it's probably not too noticeable to the listener, when you break it down, there's accents, there's dotted notes, there's semi-quavers coming in all the way through, but at speed you don't really pick it up. So I would say if you're practicing through this, just play them all even just now until you get the feel for it. And because I'm playing slow, use plenty of bow. If you think most of the really good Scottish players, they all use their bow effectively. It's part of why they're good players and they've got this grasp of tone and texture and colour and accent. The bow is providing a huge amount of that. I mean, I've heard it said that Scottish fiddle music as a style relies on the bow more heavily than any other fiddle style to capture the essential character in the music, and I probably say that's a very fair comment. I would tend to agree, but it probably was a Scottish person that said that. So anyway, but let's go back and play it through nice and steady. Before we do, I'm going to just say this does remind me of something. There's a reel called Dogs Bite Chapman. Some of you might ken if you play the fiddle. It's a great tune, but there's some of it's very similar. So if I'd made a better job, it would have been better, but you get the idea. It's very similar in style. So would I care to venture whether there's been something lifted for Dogs Bite Chapman? Well, I don't care. This could be an older tune, who knows, but certainly it's not identical, so I don't think you could level that he's plagiarised this in. So anyway, here we go, back to the beginning. And we'll play it through a few times, and then I'm going to jump on to Niel Gow's fiddle for the last tune. Okay, so Miss Dundas of Arniston by Nathaniel Gow, played on his own fiddle. Bit quicker. So, good tune. Gives you a right good workout in your third finger. Second half. So I find you're going to find that to do that smoothly, slickly, you're going to possibly have to maybe just move your hand across to try and get the notes. See what I mean? 2/3. and back. So it's 3/3 there. A string, E string, A again. And that passage, the third, is covering the A string at the time. There you go. It's a cracking tune actually. I like that. It's gonna into my repertoire, I think I'm gonna put it in. So there you go. A couple of good tunes there. Now, I'm sticking with Nathaniel Gow here, but I'm swapping fiddles. If I can fit the page, but on 197, if I just explain why I'm swapping fiddles, because it's a Nathaniel Gow tune, but this particular tune is called Niel Gow's Fiddle. Might be an idea for a start is just to hood the two fiddles up together for comparison's sake. It's not often you get to see stuff like this, really. Right. So Niel, Nathaniel. Nathaniel's, I'm not going to say one's better than the other, they're just different. This one sings a wee bit more. Now you can see hopefully a wee bit of difference in the shape. I like them both actually, and I like to see the backs. I mean, fiddles are beautiful. I mean, you could say an instrument was a sexy instrument. A fiddle, look at it, it's just beautiful. And very well looked after. Now this Nathaniel Gow, it's a fiddle playing pal of mine, Duncan Wood. Duncan bides up at Cullen, but he's a place in Edinburgh as well, and he can be found in Edinburgh probably as much as he's up in Cullen actually. But Duncan, fine fiddle player he is, regularly, certainly used to play with Cathal McConnell, famous flautist and what would you say, centre of attention at every session. I mean, the man's just full of stories and music, and so Duncan loaned me this. That I've had a show before. Duncan loaned me this fiddle, the Nathaniel Gow, because Celtic Connections, I think it was a year ago the night pretty much, it wasn't far off it, was 28th, so we're not far off. I did a recital playing the music of the great Scottish fiddle composers played in their own fiddles. Now this was restricted to the fiddles I could get hold of. So I had two Scott Skinner fiddles. There was Peter Milne's fiddle, which I own. I've got Peter Milne's fiddle. There was the Straw that Skinner recorded on, and one of the fiddles he'd had at one point, it was traded to a boy called Tuppenny Woolley. That's another story. There was William Marshall's fiddle. I got a loan of that for the recital, and then there was Nathaniel's and this one here, Niel Gow. So we get a wee closer look at that. Now, this is one of the three Niel Gow fiddles that are known. The most famous being the one that's in Blair Castle, because it's on display at the castle under his portrait, that famous Sir Henry Raeburn portrait that hangs there. There's one in the National Portrait Gallery, and I understand that when Alex Salmond was biding at Bute House when he was First Minister, the Niel Gow portrait was loaned to Bute House while he was there. It used to hang when folk came in. Now I never saw it because I was never there, but I was told it was there. So that fiddle's famous, obviously it's still at Blair Castle. And then there's another one. Now Pete Clark would be the boy to tell you whose fiddle this is. And I think that might well be the one that's in the Pinton, because it's probably the best fiddle out of the three. This one came through the hands of Duncan McCarricher, who I claimed he was a pupil of Niel Gow. Although there's some debate about that, but certainly he was known as the Perthshire Paganini. Now that would say that he must have been a fair player, he must have been pretty decent. And this has got a silver plate on the back telling you that it was presented to him. And so this thing has been floating about for a while now, actually, obviously since Gow's time, but it is a fiddle that's owned by the Perth Gaelic Society. And this was, it was Colin Douglas, his mother Sheena, can't remember, was in the Perth Gaelic Society, and her son Colin he got hold of the fiddle to basically play it and put it out and let folks see it and hear it. And so I got a lent of this for a recital last year as well, and of course both the two of them have landed being in lockdown, shielding, and so the fiddles are still here. The other ones all went back, but this one's are still sitting in the house here, so it's a great thing to be able to play them when you feel like it. But to be honest, it's still my own fiddles I play most, but we can do things like this every now and again. So there's no maker's name in this, but I'm going to play the tune Niel Gow's Fiddle on Niel Gow's Fiddle. So... this book it says to play it slowish. Now I don't think that was probably ever published in Gow's time as being played slowish, but to me this is a slow air actually. You could play it quicker, but to me it feels like it's that sort of tune. So I've never heard anybody actually playing this, so I'm just using my own instinct for how it should be played. So I'm playing it as a slow air, but nay incredibly slowly. There'll be quite a bit of movement, and the phrasing it should ebb and flow. Tempo it pushes and pulls, louds and softs, that sort of thing. So the tempo is not going to be strict. It'll push and pull. Okay, but I'll play it through first just to let you hear it and just to give you a sense of how I'm kind of interpreting this. And again, it's not a tune that I really ken very well. I've heard it played in the past, but it's not one that I have in my repertoire. So again, it was quite a nice thing to be able to play, because it allows me to get a feel for it. There you go. Lovely tune, and it definitely feels better to play it like that, and nae too strict to tempo. I mean, I would say that about any slow air actually. Kind of kills the emotion in it. Needs a sense of breath. So at the end of the phrase, you tend to just ease off a little bit before you move on to the next phrase. And the best way to think about it is like how a singer sings a song. They sing a phrase and then take a breath before the next phrase. And so fiddle playing, it's very like how a singer would sing a song. Treat it like a song without words. You haven't got lyrics, but you have to colour it in with feeling and emotion. So light and shade, essentially these are the things that you use. Light and shade, louds, softs, and not just loud or soft. There's a huge amount of degrees in between, and these flow from one into the other. It's very rare that you just have a kind of sharp change in character for it goes from really quite really loud quickly. Five Castle would be an example. It's an extreme type of tune, but it's basically a ghost story about a haunted castle. As an example of that, this is something that wouldn't be appropriate for a lot of slow airs. Not appropriate for this tune though. Niel Gow's Fiddle, that's just over the top, but for a ghosty story it's absolutely appropriate. You begin to notice the differences for your own fiddle when you're playing stuff like this though, because this is much lighter on the bottom end than my own fiddle, and fiddle's very noticeable differences in spacing. That's another thing. If you're jumping from one fiddle to the other, you find it, whoops, that third finger's not quite in the same space. And then the amount of tone that the fiddle's got in it. You can find more than you would imagine actually by working at it and getting a feel for it. But this has got nearly the tone. Not so much that in, but my own fiddle, it's not got it in it, and I find I'm practically kind of breaking the neck off it, trying to bring out the tone. But anyway, it's got its own colour and character. So let's play it again. This time, if you're going to try and play along, there might be nobody playing along. I've got no idea. But if you're going to play along, the main thing to watch is just the changes in tempo and the acceleration when you crescendo into a phrase. Almost always slowing down coming up to the end of the phrase. So it's like ebb and flow, pushing and pulling, louds and softs. It's never kind of like a metronome for it's just loud, soft, loud. It varies in between and it should flow. You don't want too many chops of the phrases because it kills the flow of the music. So as much as possible, try and keep that flow moving. It may just about stop and then it'll blossom and move away again. So if you're playing slow airs, that's the thing can really give you the emotion. And then there's just, some folk just have a feel for it. Anybody that plays a really good slow air, they don't need to be the technically best player by any stretch of imagination, but you can have classical violinists that leave you completely cold. I'm not naming on everybody. You kind of fault some players for technique and technicality, never go out of tune, but it can leave you completely cold. Somebody else with a much more modest grasp of music can just break your heart because they have that sort of inherent feeling for bringing out the emotion. So that will come with a tune the more you get to ken it. I mean, something like this, I would say I probably need another couple of weeks working on this to really get close to where I would want to go with this, but it'll do just now. So here we go. Niel Gow's Fiddle on Niel Gow's Fiddle. So there you go, Niel Gow's fiddle, played on Niel Gow's fiddle. It's not someone you can say you've seen every day of the week. But again, I like that tune, and there's so many tunes you could play. I mean, you kind of get around to putting nothing into your repertoire, but that's a tune I think I will keep playing. It's just a nice tune. So not one you hear very often. Some tunes like Niel Gow's Lament for the Death of His Second Wife, well, gosh, you hear that a lot. Hector a Hero, Mrs. Jameson's favourite. Partly, I suppose, it's because they've been played in the repertoire of really Wheel Kent players. You can I was looking at, it was a Hector McAndrew album, and I looked at the slow airs that he played on that, and there was Aldrowen Gray was one, there was Mrs. Jameson's favourite, there was Niel Gow's Lament for the Death of His Second Wife, and there was Bavagli's played. Let's just leave it at that just now. But you can, I mean, he was a kind of icon in his own lifetime and still is. But then, kind of, if you imagine, like, if Ali Bain plays a tune, loads of folk hear it, that's a great tune, I'm going to start playing that tune. And so that can have quite a big influence on if it gets played. Some tunes just seem to slip through the net, but there's a cracker for you. Top tip of the day, Niel Gow's fiddle. Right, I'm going to play this once more, and I'm going to compare the fiddles again for you while you're here, and then we'll call it a night. Right, with feeling, folks, Niel Gow's fiddle. Go. I've just had a thought, if you don't mind, listen to that again. Let's take a go at this on Nathaniel's fiddle. It's easier to compare. It's one thing having heard the fiddle, but hearing the same tune played on two different fiddles with the same player. So hopefully you'll get a good sense of the difference between them. there you go. Let me ken what you think, actually. Difficult to judge when you're actually playing them. You can obviously hear there's a difference, but I can't really tell how I sound. So you guys are probably better placed to tell me what you think of the two fiddles. Do you prefer one to the other? It was interesting that when I did the recital at Celtic Connections, there was a lot of folk that were more interested in the fiddles than me, as you'd expect, because how often you get to see all these fiddles lined up together. But there was, every fiddle had somebody said that was the one I liked best, and it just shows you there's everybody's got different tastes. So there was no one that kind of came out with, that's the best fiddle, we all like that. Now, even Peter Milne's fiddle, which is a really modestly equipped instrument, it's got a nice mellow tone, but it just doesn't have the engine compared to some instruments that were there that night. So it'd be interesting to hear what you think, whether one comes out as being favoured. They definitely have contrasts. If I got my own fiddle and brought that in, you would hear it again. There would be another big contrast. So there we go. That was 3 tunes tonight. The jig, Lady Charlotte Bruce's favourite, Miss Dundas of Arniston, and Niel Gow's fiddle to finish. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have, which is why I'm still sitting yapping. But I'll maybe come back another night in the next few weeks and do some more stuff, just if I feel like it. Stay tuned to find out. But thanks for looking in. I think there's been one or two folk. It's not a concert, but hopefully there's been some it's been some interest to you anyway. But Friday night, live for the lounge, we'll be back, and we may well play some of these tunes then. There'll certainly be other stuff, and we'll have a lovely show and a singing that night. So it's usually a good crack anyway, so hopefully see a few folk on Friday. But in the meantime, thanks for looking in. If you've enjoyed it and you feel inclined, the tip jars, www.paypal.me/Paul Anderson Shona Dawn. But there's no pressure to do that. It's there just because it is, because sometimes folk do bung something in, but I'm doing it anyway just because I feel like it. So anyway, see you later folks. Take care, and we'll see you later.